They truly believe that more government power and less individual freedom is the path they seek. So few of these young people have paid attention to history enough to understand that these utopias always fail. There's always an oligarchy at the top that speaks of equality while they live lavishly. They live lavishly while promising a better future and convince the common folk that if they just suffer a little more, the utopia will soon be here. Our greatest obstacle to freedom right now is that such a large portion of Americans don't want to be free. Such a large portion of Americans don't want their fantasies of a promised tomorrow shattered. So many Americans prefer to be nursed by the government and care not that their version of freedom is in opposition to our liberties. The opposition to our freedom has united in a successful campaign of keeping our side constantly at each other's throats. The opposition has learned how to unite their defenses to succeed in their cause and disjoin our troops for exactly the opposite effect. There are no arguments on the receivership side of the battle line. As long as the receiving continues, the bottom feeders are content. The only grumbling heard is that the bounty of government plunder is not increasing fast enough. The receivers' numbers continually grow with a larger voice, insistently crying for more, and as long as there remains a single person possessing more than they themselves possess, their hunger for more reward will not end. As long as the other side remains more organized in their cause than our side, they win, we lose. We lose our properties, and we lose our freedoms. We are at war within the boundaries of this great country. We are at war with the fear of losing everything we hold dear. We are at risk of losing our earned properties, and we are at risk of losing our liberties. On one side of the battle line are the people who believe that the government should control everything there is, and that the government should have the power to possess and distribute all that exists. On that side of the battle line are well organized because they all believe in their version of freedom. Their version of freedom, which includes the unregulated power of government to plunder and to distribute. These people believe in the false philanthropy, and these people are organized to continue this practice into the future while they chase their fantasy of a non-existent universal remedy to their personal life struggles. On this side of the battle line are the people who believe in their right to retain ownership of the fruits of their labors. On this side of the battle line are the people who believe in freedom and a small controlled government. On this side of the battle line, victory is waning because on this side of the battle line, people are extremely disorganized, continually squabble over themselves over petty differences, and refuse to unite as one because of their individual versions of freedom. As long as the other side continues to unite in their cause of obtaining free stuff, they win. As long as we perpetuate the ignorance of silencing voices and fighting amongst ourselves about which version of freedom will rule us, we will have earned the loss of every one of our liberties. Thank you.
How dare he?
He's got it written down, so I have to have it.
Well, thank you, Eric. I know you've been waiting a long time to say that to me. Look at the radar. Looks like even the storm doesn't want to disturb us today. It's breaking up over us, so that's good. If it does get a little crazy, we'll get shelter here, so if it starts to rain or thunder or anything. Those of you that know me for a while know that I'd like to first and foremost pay homage to that person, to the Creator for having given me my gifts. So I'm going to start my response with a little prayer. Heavenly Father, you have provided us and our country with abundance and guidance from the foundation of this country. We ask for your continued guidance as we approach dark times ahead. We ask that you fill us with your grace so that we have the courage and wisdom to stand up to the enemy. For this purpose, help us engage in meaningful discussion and put aside our differences as we focus on the greater task of restoring and ensuring our God-given freedoms and liberties. We ask this in your name. Amen. Thank you for coming out on this hot, humid Northwest Ohio weekend. I wish there could have been more of you, but
It's global warming.
it's global warming. Yeah, we've heard a lot of good information from John, from Ralph, from Randy, of course, from Harry. And Harry, I'm going to give you this mic back when I'm done, and I got a couple questions I want to ask you about your response, and that'll start the debate. But we've had a lot of good information. Hopefully, Harry and I can continue to provide more good information to you. The purpose of this gathering is to encourage open and honest debate, to not be afraid to be different, to not be afraid to have differences, and to get them out in the open so that we can work through them, figure out how we can accomplish the common goal. It's also to help our fellow Americans and conservatives and libertarians and those who say they're in the movement but just show up at rallies, help them to want to embrace logic and reason. That's one of the things that is missing in our society right now. We have given up on that. This idea is something that Anna and I have had for years. We wanted to call them people's debates. You know, debates for the people, where we have an idea, we invite people to come, open mic, let's talk about whatever the topic is. Of course, it's been on the back burner. I'd like to thank Harry for helping me move it to the front burner, because I think this is an important thing to introduce the idea of disagreeing and being able to disagree agreeably. So thank you, Harry, for lighting a fire under my butt to get this going.
I got a blowtorch.
And partly I said earlier, Harry and I have had some epic debates about this on emails, and so the idea was to get out in front of people and hopefully YouTube and air them to the masses. As I think will be apparent after my statement, Harry and I agree just about on everything. We agree on the why. I think we disagree on the how and the what. We agree on the what we want, but the how and the why we don't. I believe in order to change the government and the direction the country is heading, we first have to change our culture. You can't reduce the size of government when 60% of the people are receiving some sort of government assistance. They're not going to vote against what they perceive to be their best interest.
I disagree.
And politicians, the media, and the culture have told them or convinced them that accepting this government handouts is what's in their best interest. That they can't do any better. That this is the best they're going to be able to do. Convince them that they're victims. That no matter what they try to do, if they try to step out of line, that someone's going to hold them back. Whether it's the man, whether it's white people, whether it's the rich, whether it's Republicans, whether it's Democrats, it doesn't matter. They're told they're victims, and they believe it. This is the problem we face. We have a culture that does not even look to or even respect reason and logic. Think about this. In today's world, in order to win an argument, you have to be the one yelling the loudest, or who has the best singer. Our culture has turned into a never-ending Jerry Springer episode. The majority of people under the age of 30 get their news from Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, or Stephen Colbert. I mean, think about it, those are comedians. And you will talk to them and ask, I do this every time I'm in a restaurant, I'll talk to the waitress, they're usually younger, I'll say, have you heard about this? No. Have you heard about Benghazi? No. Have you heard about the IRS? No. Oh, really? Where do you get your news? Oh, Jon Stewart, isn't he great? That's not news. So that's one of the problems we face. And it doesn't get any better if you're over 30. The majority of the Americans get their news from TMZ or maybe the NBC Nightly News. This is the problem we face. We are reaping what the education system has sown for decades. The decrease of reason and logic replaced it with subjective, emotional decision-making.
They did their job.
Doing what makes you feel good, not what is the best decision for you. Smoking pot makes me feel good, to hell with the long-term effects. This is the problem we face. We can't attack the problem collectively. We have to tackle this problem one person at a time. Each of us needs to work to change our culture in our personal sphere. Talk about personal responsibility. Talk about freedom. Talk about the Bill of Rights. I mean, the current scandals right now have given us an excellent opportunity to engage in those conversations. to talk about freedom, to talk about the First Amendment, talk about the Fourth Amendment. Most people don't even know what it is. Explain it to them. Explain why the Bill of Rights happened. And most importantly, explain what happens when a government gets too big and it gets out of control. We're seeing an example of that. So we are being given a gift right now of an example of what happens when the government gets too large. We need to take advantage of that. And again, not at a huge level, individually. We have to change our thinking as well. We need to think generationally. We need to plant the seeds now and water them with our actions and our courage so that they'll sprout in the future generations. Cultural changes don't happen overnight. And most likely, without some divine intervention, none of us here tonight will live to see our country restored to the way it was. It's not going to happen in our lifetime without some divine intervention, of course. We're too far down the wrong path. But we can be that speck of light to the younger generation, saying there is a difference, there is a different way, there is freedom. It can work. Each of us must be a beacon of that freedom, of that liberty, of true hope. Not the hope that's peddled from DC, but true hope that things can be better, that this isn't what the freedom and liberty is truly about, what we've become. We have all been placed here at this time for a reason. Our job is to relay the groundwork for the Constitution. We can say that we want to live by the Constitution, but right now, 80% of Americans have no idea what that means. It's our job to help them to understand this is why we need to, this is what the Constitution's about. This is why we need to go back to it. Our job is to relay the foundation, to do what the founders had to do, in the early 1700s. They had to relay that foundation of personal freedom, personal responsibility. We have to set in motion the movement back to a moral and just culture, one where every man is subject to the law, and where we have the right to life, liberty, and property, and we accept the responsibilities that come with those rights. If we can do that, then our children and grandchildren can begin the process of dismantling this monstrosity that has become the federal government. The only other option is revolution. And that is not a good option. And you might be shocked that I would say that. I know Randy was a little shocked earlier. But if you look at what's happening around the world right now, you've got revolutions going on from the Middle East. You got people rioting in Brazil. Nothing good is going to come out of that. Okay? Only one revolution that I know of had anything good come out of it.
Ireland, Scotland.
There was one. Aren't they still members of the UK? There was only one exception to that revolution, to the revolution being bad, and our founders had firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. Folks, we are not the people that our founders were. We're not yet, but our kids and our grandkids have the chance to be, and to restore the ground or the Constitution, but we have to lay the groundwork. And I want to address a few things that Harry said, because I agree with him that the Tea Party has morphed from what it started. And when I first started, the Children of Liberty, I never called it a Tea Party, because I could see what would happen. The politics is going to naturally drift to bigger groups, because you have to, because of the money involved in politics. So I knew that the Tea Parties would have to either join at a national level, and you get your Tea Party patriots and things of that nature, or they would have to become involved with the Republican Party or Democrat. So that's purposely why I tried to avoid making the Children of Liberty a Tea Party, because that's where it's going to be. If it's all about politics, you have to be one of the parties. Because whether we like it or not, our country is a two-party system. When it wasn't, even if you look at the founding of the Republican Party, there was a three-party system for 2 election cycles, and then the Whigs went away. The GOP as it is dead. There needs to be a new party. It needs to go the way of the Whig Party. It has lost its principles. It's become, Democrat socialist light. So that's where we need to have libertarians and whatnots, step up and reclaim, whether it's a Republican Party or another party. But we have to understand that you're not going to have multi-party system. We're not Europe. It's just not going to work. The other thing, Ron Paul. Okay, I know you've talked about, Ron Paul not getting fair treatment last election cycle.
Yeah.
Well, he did not go out and claim his time. Okay, you look at whether it was Herman Cain. He had a brief moment where he went out and preached on an idea that attracted media audience. Okay, I don't believe there was a cabal against Ron Paul. Okay, it's just he did not attract the money that makes politics go. So I don't think it was something that was intended. Now you say that, that I was part of the silencing of Ron Paul or whatnot. I disagree with that because I did not. Well, I think I talked about that, the dismantling of the Tea Party. Okay. Well, I agree, the dismantling of the Tea Party because I knew where the Tea Party was headed. Okay? If you want to become political, you have to be one of the parties, okay, or create your own party. And that's why early on, I talked about how to precinct build. If we could have gotten enough liberty-minded people in and became precinct captains and won chairmanship, then it wouldn't matter what the Republican Party was called, we would have our beliefs. But that didn't happen. Okay?
Not yet.
It could still happen, and it's still the best way to gain power for libertarians, is to take over the Republican Party. Because, again, you don't want to try to reinvent the wheel. I will agree with that statement every day. Because you're just going to be banging your head against the wall. So I'll let you respond to those.
Is there gonna be a wrestling match? Are they gonna wrestle?
Arm wrestle.